Hello guy and welcome back to HEIR SLYTHERIN Book 2 Aslo guy, this the last part of the Book 2. Book 3 will come out soon. Lastly, I am sorry for the delay. I have been very sick for the past 4 days. Please leave a like and subscribe, it's free, so why not? Chapter 13. Ron was the first into Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. Myrtle. Myrtle. We need to talk to you. Harry and Snape followed more cautiously, wands drawn. Nothing in the bathroom seemed to be out of place, which was both reassuring, no danger, and concerning, no Ginny. There was a gush and a splash from a nearby toilet. Both Snape and Harry trained their wands on the source of the commotion, only to discover that the source was Myrtle herself. "Oh," said the ghost. "I thought you wanted to speak with me, not hex me. Everybody is always trying to hex poor Myrtle." Moaning Myrtle turned and crouched, preparing to leap back into the toilet. "No, wait," Harry cried. "We need to ask you a question." "So you do want to talk to me?" Myrtle said. "Yes," said Ron abruptly. "How did you die?" Myrtle crossed her arms. "How offensive. That's a terribly personal question." "We need to know," Ron said. "But I don't need to tell you," Myrtle said, sticking her nose in the air. Snape stepped forward. "Ghost, I am Severus Snape, a teacher at this school. I order you to tell us how you died. If you do not, I vow that I will see you exorcised." "Fantastic," Myrtle said sarcastically. "Then I can finally get out of this toilet." "Myrtle, please," Harry said with a note of pleading in his voice. Both Ron and Snape were being rude, and Harry could see that Myrtle would need to be convinced. "Ron's sister is in trouble. If you don't help us, she could die, and we think it might be the same way that you died." Myrtle tilted her head back and forth. "Maybe it would be nice to have some company around here." Ron's eyes widened as he realized what Myrtle meant. "She's only 11. "Come on, Myrtle," Harry said. "You don't like being cooped up in this bathroom, do you?" "It stinks," said Myrtle. "You wouldn't want that to happen to somebody else, would you?" "I guess not," Myrtle said slowly. "Then we need your help. We need to find out what happened to Ron's sister. And if we know how you died, that might give us the clue to solve the mystery." Harry's voice was soft and smooth. "Well, please, Myrtle? You're the only one who can help us." Harry felt like he was laying it on really thick, but it seemed to be what Myrtle wanted. "Okay. But there's not much to tell," said Myrtle. "I came out of the stall there on the end, and I saw 2 giant orange eyes. And that was it. The next thing I knew, I was a ghost, floating above these toilets." "What a load of rubbish!" Ron exclaimed. "That doesn't tell us anything." "Well, you're the one who wanted my help. It isn't easy to talk about," Myrtle shouted. It sounded as if she were beginning to cry. With a wail, she dove into the nearest toilet. A sarcastic cry of, "You're welcome," echoed up from the pipes as she fled. Ron turned to Snape. "What do we do now?" Harry was distracted, though. Myrtle had said that she saw the eyes as she came out of the last bathroom stall. Obviously, the basilisk hadn't been inside the bathroom when Myrtle had entered. Which meant that the basilisk either followed her inside, or it had come from within the bathroom itself. If it came from outside, then Harry and Ron and Snape were no closer to finding the location of the chamber than they had been at the beginning of the term. Harry had to assume that it had come from inside the bathroom, because it was Ginny's only chance. Harry walked over to the last stall and stepped inside. This was where Myrtle had been standing when she saw the eyes. She was coming out, and looking directly at a sink. A sink no different from any other sink in the bathroom. Except that it was. Harry crossed the bathroom quickly. There was something strange about this sink. The faucet and handles were different. All the other faucets appeared to be normal, albeit ornate, pieces of plumbing. But this faucet was a snake's mouth, and the handles on either side were the scaled bodies of snakes. The symbols of Salazar Slytherin. Harry grabbed the nearest handle. Maybe the faucet was the trigger to the Chamber of Secrets. Harry tried to turn first one handle, then the other, but they refused to move. "Potter, what are you doing?" asked Snape. Both Snape and Ron were looking at Harry strangely. Harry ignored them and continued to tug at the handles. "This sink is different," Harry said. "It's snakes. It can't be a coincidence." Harry braced himself against the wall with his foot, putting his full body weight behind his attempt to turn the handle. "You believe that the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets is triggered by a wash basin?" said Snape. "This is unlikely." "Then why won't it turn?" asked Harry. "Because nobody has used this bathroom in years," shouted Ron despondently. Tears were welling up behind his eyes. Harry turned his attention back to the faucet. He would give it one more go. There's no reason to stick, he hissed under his breath. Just open. Harry gave a mighty tug, and the handle turned easily. There was a deep rumble, and the tiles of the bathroom began to slide and rearrange themselves. Harry stepped back and Snape simultaneously stepped forward, placing himself between the boys and the freshly opened Chamber of Secrets. "Blimey," said Ron quietly. An inspired thought, to use Parseltongue, Snape said. Harry hadn't even realized that he had done it. "What did you say?" I just got mad and told it to open up." Snape grunted. "Indeed. What use would Salazar have for a password when he was the world's only known Parselmouth?" Snape turned back to the boys. "Both of you. Outside the bathroom. Now." Once the three wizards were outside the bathroom, Snape spoke quickly and firmly. "Potter, Weasley, you will go and find Professor McGonagall. Tell her that I require her help." Ron protested. "But my sister is in there. You are second-year students. You are not capable of facing the heir of Slytherin." Snape turned his gaze toward the bathroom. "Perhaps none of us are. I may be able to delay the heir long enough for Professor McGonagall to arrive and assist me. Together, the two of us may stand a chance." Snape seemed to be speaking more to himself than to the boys. Harry nodded. "We'll find Professor McGonagall, sir." "Good." Before Snape could re-enter the bathroom, a figure rushed into the hallway, levitating several trunks. "Oh, hello Severus," said Gilderoy Lockhart. Snape smiled. "Gilderoy. How fortuitous. I am about to enter the Chamber of Secrets in an attempt to rescue the young Miss Weasley. Will you accompany me?" Lockhart blanched. "Well, urgent call, you see." Snape shook his head. "Now is not the time for excuses. If you are any sort of wizard, you will join me now." Lockhart carefully set his trunks at the side of the hall. He held his wand in front of his body, and Harry could see his hand shaking with nervousness. White-faced, Lockhart followed Snape into the bathroom. Harry and Ron started down the hall, heading toward Gryffindor Tower to look for McGonagall. Just as they were about to turn the corner, they heard a bang from the bathroom. "You hear that?" Harry asked. Ron nodded. "Why would they be casting spells already?" "We should go back and check," said Ron. Harry shook his head. "I think we should go for McGonagall. If something's gone wrong, we might not have time." Before Harry could say anything, Ron was running back to the bathroom. Harry sighed, then followed. Harry and Ron entered the bathroom with wands drawn, prepared to battle the heir of Slytherin. Instead, they found Professor Lockhart crouching over Snape's unconscious body. Lockhart was muttering to himself. "The intrepid hero, Gilderoy Lockhart, has stunned the evil Professor Snape. Our hero will perform a quick memory charm, and escape the haunted school." "What are you doing?" shouted Harry. Lockhart spun and raised his wand. "Boys. Shouldn't you be getting help? The heir of Slytherin has knocked Professor Snape unconscious." Harry shook his head. "You're the only one here. And I just heard you say that you stunned Professor Snape." A dark look crossed Lockhart's face. "Memory charms all around, then. Only spell I'm any good at, really." "What about my sister?" asked Ron. "Tragic," Lockhart said. His voice changed, and became slightly deeper, as if he were speaking to an audience. "Indeed, despite the valiant efforts of our hero and two students, the wicked Severus Snape, heir of Slytherin, had already slain poor Ginny Weasley." "What are you talking about?" Ron blurted. Lockhart snapped out of his reverie. "Stand still, boys. This won't hurt at all. Obliviate." Harry and Ron dove in opposite directions, dodging Lockhart's spell. As Harry flew through the air, he thrust his wand at Lockhart. "Expelliarmus." Harry's spell caught Lockhart square in the chest, blasting him across the room and through the opening to the Chamber of Secrets. There was a long silence, then the sound of a faraway splash. Lockhart's wand fell to the floor of the bathroom with a clatter. Harry picked it up and tucked it into his robes. Harry and Ron stood and walked to Snape's frozen body. "Do you know how to unstun somebody?" asked Harry. "No," replied Ron. "I wish Hermione was here." Harry nodded. "Me, too." "Up to us then," Ron said. He raised his wand, which still had not been repaired, and turned to the opening where Lockhart had disappeared. "Into the chamber." "Ron, I still think we should get McGonagall." "There's no time. I'm going. You get McGonagall, if you want." Ron stepped forward and dove through the entrance. "Wait!" Harry shouted, but it was too late. Ron was gone. Harry looked down at Snape. I know what you're thinking. Risk versus reward, right? Risk, I might be killed by the Voldemort, the heir of Slytherin. Reward, Ron, Ginny and I all survive, and we defeat a scourge that has plagued Hogwarts for half a century. High risk, high reward. Harry walked over to the entrance to the chamber, picking up Lockhart's wand on the way. That dumb Gryffindor didn't even take Lockhart's wand. He doesn't stand a chance without me. And you said it yourself, Professor. There's no time to waste. Harry leapt through the entrance. After sliding through a pipe for what seemed like an hour, Harry was spat out into a dark corridor. He stood and found that he was covered in grime. Several steps away, similarly disgusting, was Ron Weasley. In other circumstances, said Harry, that would have been fun. Harry reached into his robes to give Lockhart's wand to Ron, but its wand was gone. Harry had lost it somewhere on the slide. They'd never find it in the darkness. Wait a second, said Ron. Where's Lockhart? Lockhart dove out of the darkness, tackling Ron and seizing his wand. He stood and triumphantly incanted, Obliviate. Ron's broken wand, shabbily repaired by Lockhart himself, exploded with the force of a small bomb. Harry was thrown farther down the hall, while Ron and Lockhart were hurled backwards. Between them, the ceiling of the corridor collapsed, blocking the tunnel. Harry stood and dusted himself off. Weasley. Are you okay? Weasley's sarcastic voice was faint through the rocks. Sure, that was a right laugh. Harry cracked a small smile. What about Lockhart? He keeps asking where we are. I think the memory charm backfired. Can you dig through the rocks? Harry asked. With what wand? Harry looked down at the wand in his own hand. He could clear a path to Ron, but it would take so much time. Ron wouldn't be any use in a fight, or they could try to climb back up the pipe and find a professor, but that would take even longer. Harry knew what he had to do. Ron? Yeah. I want you to know. Last Christmas, when we went exploring with my invisibility cloak? That was the best Christmas I've ever had. Harry took a deep breath. Try to climb back up the tunnel, Ron. Get McGonagall or Flitwick. I'm going after your sister. Ron's voice was quiet. Thank you, Harry. Wish me luck. Good luck, mate, said Ron. Harry turned and walked further down the corridor. In the oppressive darkness of the tunnel, the light from his wand felt dim and insignificant, and Harry remembered Snape's words outside the bathroom. You are only a second-year student. You are not capable of facing the heir of Slytherin. Perhaps none of us are. Chapter 14. Harry walked deeper into the tunnel, toward the Chamber of Secrets. He held his wand aloft, a luminous charm lighting the way. Finally, after a great distance, the hallway widened into a massive underground chamber. In the center of the chamber lay the still and pale body of Ginny Weasley, clutching a small book in her hands. Harry ran to her side, dropping his wand to the ground. Weasley. The girl was warm to the touch, but didn't respond. Weasley, wake up. That won't do much good, said a calm voice. Harry looked up to find a tall, good-looking young man standing nearby. The young man was dressed in Slytherin robes, similar to Harry's but different in some of the small details. The young man was strangely blurry, as if he were smudged at the edges, but his face seemed familiar. In his hands was Harry's wand. Who are you? Harry asked. Tom Riddle, replied the young man. A name of no consequence. Tom Riddle? But you 50 years ago. You helped close the Chamber of Secrets. How are you here? Riddle smiled. I'm a memory. A memory from a diary, held there for 50 years. Harry didn't understand, but things were urgent. Tom, the heir of Slytherin has released a basilisk. I know. Good. We have to get out of here. Tom smiled. Only one of us is leaving here today, Harry Potter. And Harry suddenly understood why he recognized Tom Riddle's face. Harry had seen it before, at the end of last year, in the Mirror of Erised. Everything made sense. So that's why you turned in Hagrid 50 years ago, isn't it? Said Harry. You framed him, because you're the heir of Slytherin. Tom's smile grew wider. Clever. You are a true Slytherin. What have you done to Ginny? Nothing she hasn't done to herself. The girl started writing in my diary, and was too foolish to be suspicious when the diary wrote back. With just a little encouragement, she poured her soul into that diary. Oh, I met Harry Potter at the bookstore today. Oh, Harry is so good at Quidditch, it's too bad that he's in Slytherin. Oh, I sent Harry a Valentine, and I'm so embarrassed. His eyes are green as fresh pickled toad, his hair is as dark as a blackboard, I wish he was mine, he's really divine, our hero who conquered the Dark Lord. Tom made a nasty face, and Harry caught a glimpse of how Voldemort would become the horrible parasite that had existed on the back of Quirrell's head. What rubbish. The stupid girl put too much of herself into my diary, and there wasn't anything she could do when my diary started putting itself into her. What do you mean? Harry thought he understood quite well, but he needed time to find a way out of his situation. Under my direction, Ginny Weasley opened the Chamber of Secrets. Ginny Weasley killed the roosters at Hogwarts. Ginny Weasley terrorized the mudbloods that defile this school. And in a few short moments, Ginny Weasley will be completely consumed, and I will return to life. Tom smiled. When I have returned to my full power, Harry Potter, I will have many questions for you. Like what? Harry was glancing around the room, searching for any kind of help. How did you defeat the Dark Lord Voldemort? How did you defeat the most powerful dark wizard of all time, escaping with only a scar? You mean the most powerful dark wizard of all time doesn't already know the answer? And there it was. Tom Riddle's curiosity had reminded Harry of his mother's blood protections. That was the key to once again defeating Voldemort. Tom Riddle laughed. So, you already know my true name, the real identity of the heir of Slytherin. You are quite clever, Harry Potter. We will see if that cleverness makes you a match for Lord Voldemort, the greatest wizard in history. Harry took heart in Voldemort's overconfidence. Harry was reasonably sure that he could defeat Voldemort the same way he had last year. He just needed to get close enough to touch the Dark Wizard. Harry stood and began walking to one side, never taking his eyes off Voldemort. As he circled, Harry's steps took him closer and closer, as if he were being slowly sucked into a whirlpool. Voldemort turned in place, facing Harry the entire time. You're not the greatest wizard, Harry said. You know it, and you've always known it. If you were the greatest wizard in history, you wouldn't have framed Hagrid and closed the chamber 50 years ago. You were scared of Dumbledore, scared that he would catch you. There is no equal to Lord Voldemort. Riddle's face was contorted with rage. No equal, because Dumbledore is better. Harry smirked. His steps took him slowly closer to the spirit. Voldemort screamed at Harry. Tell me, boy. Tell me how you defeated me. Voldemort's voice grew cold. Tell me, and I will let you live, a little while longer. My mother died for me. Her blood magic protects me, even now. You can't touch me, Voldemort. With that, Harry dove at the ghost, arms wide, ready to tackle and wrestle Voldemort to the ground. Harry passed directly through Voldemort, as if the Dark Wizard were nothing more than mist. Voldemort chuckled. Blood magic. A powerful protection, indeed. That explains much. I had wondered if you were another Dark Lord, perhaps taking possession of a child's body. Voldemort turned to face Harry, who was still crouched on the ground. Certainly you have noticed the strange likenesses between us. Both orphans. Both half-bloods. Both raised by muggles. Indeed, you are a Parselmouth, or else you would not have been able to enter the Chamber of Secrets. We even look quite a bit alike. Harry ran a hand through his hair, uncomfortable with the comparison. Voldemort continued, but if it is mere blood magic that protects you from me, there is nothing to protect you from my basilisk. Voldemort turned and hissed in the strange, sibilant voice that Harry had come to recognize as Parseltongue. Speak to me, Slytherin, greatest of the Hogwarts Four. Voldemort glanced over his shoulder. It is time to die, Harry Potter. From the back of the chamber, an enormous serpent arose and slithered forward. Harry averted his eyes, avoiding the serpent's petrifying gaze. Kill him, ordered Voldemort. The shadow of the enormous beast stretched forward as the serpent drew back to strike. Harry, keeping his eyes down, raised his hand and voice. Please, don't. The shadow froze. What is this? Asked the basilisk. How can there be two speakers? Obey my orders, demanded Voldemort. Kill the intruder. Harry's mind worked feverishly. I am a member of Slytherin House. The Chamber of Secrets should not be open to attack Slytherin's own. The basilisk hesitated. But, I must obey Slytherin's heir. Voldemort's voice was strong. I am Lord Voldemort, bearer of the Ring of Salazar Slytherin. The spirit of Salazar Slytherin is alive in me. The blood of Salazar Slytherin flows within my veins, passed to me by my mother. I am the heir of Slytherin. Obey me. The shadow began to sway. I must obey the blood, hissed the basilisk. Harry spoke quickly. I speak your tongue. I was sorted into Slytherin House, and the spirit of Slytherin is alive in me. Harry bent and picked up a sharp rock from the ground. He hoped that the basilisk was speaking literally when it said that it must obey the blood. Still averting his eyes, Harry slashed the rock across his palm, and blood welled up from the jagged cut. The blood of Slytherin flows in my veins. Harry glanced sideways at the specter of Voldemort. If you are the heir, then where is your blood, Tom Riddle? Voldemort drew back, stunned. Kill him. The serpent inhaled sharply. The blood. The spirit of Slytherin in the blood. Harry's voice was calm. I am the blood. I am the spirit. I am the heir of Slytherin. Obey me. Do not attack. The voice of the basilisk became calm. I will obey. My eyes are closed for you, heir of Slytherin. Harry looked upward. The basilisk had closed its eyes and waited, head raised and body coiled, in the center of the chamber. Voldemort's face, so handsome when calm, had become a hideous expression of anger. Potter. You fool. You have cost me a valuable ally. Voldemort clasped both his hands around Harry's wand. A green light surrounded the wand, then blazed forth to form a fiery scimitar. Voldemort leaped up at the basilisk, whose eyes were still closed. Before Harry could shout a warning, Voldemort drew the sword through the serpent's neck, severing its head. The basilisk's head fell open-mouthed to the floor, where its saber-like teeth snapped and scattered across the chamber. Voldemort landed and turned slowly to face Harry. The fiery sword flickered and died, and Voldemort was once again holding only Harry's wand. I may not yet have a body, but I have magic enough to kill you, Harry Potter. Voldemort waved the wand at a small rock. The rock rose into the air, the rocketed toward Harry's head. Harry's hand snapped upward, and he caught the stone mere inches away from his face. The corners of Voldemort's mouth turned upward. No sane person would call the expression a smile. Harry looked around for a weapon, anything he could use to defend himself. The only thing available was a basilisk fang that had clattered across the floor and come to rest at his feet. Harry picked up the curved tooth and held it out in front of him. A basilisk fang, Potter? I might be scared if I had a body. Voldemort waved Harry's wand, and the fang was jerked out of Harry's hands. Voldemort reversed Harry's wand, holding it as if he were prepared to stab the tip downward into Harry's chest. The basilisk fang, still floating in the air, turned its point toward Harry. Voldemort raised and lowered Harry's wand experimentally, and the basilisk fang matched the movement identically, slicing through the air. That fang cannot touch me, Voldemort said. You, however. Exclamation point. Exclamation point. Asterisk. The spirit of Voldemort stalked through the Chamber of Secrets, basilisk fang hovering several feet in front of him. Come out, Potter. Every moment I grow stronger. Your only chance to defeat me is now. Behind a pillar, Harry gasped for breath. He had been sprinting through the darkness, trying to avoid the deadly touch of the basilisk's fang. Somehow, Harry had managed to elude Voldemort, for now. Harry knew that he couldn't run forever. He was quickly tiring, and with every second, Voldemort grew stronger. As Voldemort searched near the entrance of the chamber, Harry snuck through the shadows, moving quietly toward Ginny's body. Harry crept out into the center of the chamber, carefully keeping the massive body of the basilisk between himself and Voldemort. Harry cast one final glance around. There was no sign of Voldemort. He had to take his chance. Harry darted to Ginny Weasley's side, and began shaking her shoulders. Wake up, he whispered. Harry grabbed the diary from her hands, hoping to break its connection with the girl, but Ginny continued to lay lifeless on the floor of the chamber. We have to go. Potter. Are you ready for your death? Harry looked up. Voldemort stood a short distance away, eyes blazing with green fire. The basilisk fang hovered between Voldemort and Harry, poised to strike. Harry scrambled backwards, Tom Riddle's diary in hand. As he crawled, Harry slipped in the blood that was still pouring from the neck of the basilisk. Voldemort strode forward, closing the distance between himself and Harry. Voldemort raised the hand holding Harry's wand, and the basilisk fang rose into the air, as well. After I kill you, Voldemort said, I will hang your corpse from the highest tower in Hogwarts. The world will know that nobody ever defeats Lord Voldemort twice. I might be scared if I had a body. Of course. He just needed a moment to prepare. It's too late for that, Harry said. I already defeated you twice. What? Voldemort paused, arm raised in the air. You mean Ginny didn't tell you everything? Last year, you tried to steal the Philosopher's Stone, and I stopped you. That was the second time I beat you. For being the greatest wizard in history you sure seem to die a lot. Harry shifted his arms. The attack would come now, and he was ready. Voldemort's eyes narrowed. And now you will die, you insolent boy. Voldemort brought his hand down, and the basilisk fang stabbed toward Harry's heart. Harry moved quickly. As the fang fell, Harry moved Voldemort's diary in front of his chest, and held it out like a shield. The fang stabbed deep into the diary, and ink began pouring out of the wound. Voldemort screamed, and the diary shook in Harry's hands. Voldemort raised Harry's wand, trying to draw the fang out of the diary. Harry's hand darted out and caught the fang before it could be pulled away. Voldemort's magic yanked and tugged at the fang, but Harry could feel that each effort was weaker than the last. As Voldemort weakened, Harry began to twist the fang, driving it farther and farther into the diary. Black ink poured out of the diary's wound and over Harry's hands as Voldemort's ghost screamed and struggled. Finally, Harry drove the fang entirely through the diary. Voldemort's voice fell silent. All the color had drained from the spirit. Voldemort had become insubstantial. Harry's wand, which Voldemort had so easily held only moments before, literally slid through the shade's fingers and dropped to the floor. "That's free, Voldemort." With those words, Voldemort's spirit dissipated into the air like a fine mist. Harry dropped the diary and retrieved his wand. Once his wand was safely in his pocket, Harry staggered toward Ginny Weasley. He fell to his knees just as he reached her side. Harry shook Ginny's shoulders. "Weasley, wake up. Come on, Weasley." The girl gave no response. "I didn't do all that for fun. Wake up, you stupid Gryffindor, wake up." Ginny remained silent. Her face was disconcertingly pale. Harry scooped up Ginny in his arms. "I'm not letting you die here, Weasley." He began walking toward the entrance of the chamber. His steps were unsteady and irregular. The battle with Voldemort had left him physically drained. The exit to the chamber was very far away. Harry stumbled. He caught his balance, took another step. Another. "Help!" Harry was yelling, his voice echoing in the empty chamber. "Anybody, please help. We're down here. Help!" Harry's voice was almost as weak as his body. Harry tried to take another step, but he tripped and pitched forward. Ginny's body tumbled from his arms and onto the cold marble floor of the chamber. Harry took deep, gasping breaths. As he looked down at Ginny, he saw drops of water appear on her face. Harry hadn't realized that he was crying. With a sob, Harry collapsed on top of Ginny's body. "I'm sorry. I can't do it. I can't do it alone. I'm so sorry." A shriek echoed through the chamber. Harry's head jerked upward. Fawkes, Dumbledore's phoenix, was swooping through the air toward Harry and Ginny. The bird landed on the opposite side of Ginny's body. Fawkes hopped forward, moving closer to Ginny. The phoenix leaned in and looked closely at Ginny's face. Fawkes began to cry quietly, his tears mixing with Harry's on Ginny's cheek. Harry felt movement under his hand. Harry held his breath, certain that it had been his imagination, but after a moment, he felt it again. A heartbeat. Harry reached up and brushed Ginny's hair from her eyes. As he did so, his hand smeared Fawkes' tears across Ginny's forehead. With a massive gasp, Ginny sat up. Her eyes frantically darted around the chamber, ultimately settling on Harry. Before she could say anything, Harry dove forward and embraced Ginny. "You're alive," he repeated, over and over, laughing and cheering. Ginny began crying in great sobs, clutching at Harry's robes. For the second time in 2 years, Harry found himself hugging a crying first-year Gryffindor girl. This time, he knew what to do. Harry hugged back. Chapter 15. Harry found himself in an odd position, enveloped in a crushing hug from Molly Weasley, a woman he had only met once before. Only inches away was Ron Weasley, similarly crushed by his mother's arms. That wasn't to say that Harry didn't enjoy the hug. Physical affection had been rather scarce at the Dursleys, and Harry was beginning to discover that hugs were rather wonderful. But the longer the embrace lasted, the more Harry struggled to breathe. "Mom, come on," said Ron. Reluctantly, Mrs. Weasley let go of the boys. The three of them were in Dumbledore's office, along with the rest of the Weasley clan. Ginny was curled in her father's arms, face burrowed into his neck. George and Fred and Percy had their heads in the fire, where they were conversing with Bill and Charlie, letting the older boys know that Ginny was okay. "Perhaps," Dumbledore said quietly, "young Ms. Weasley should visit the hospital wing for a checkup from Madame Pomfrey. Afterwards, you are welcome to come down to the Great Hall for a midnight feast. If William or Charles can manage, they are welcome to visit, as well." Arthur Weasley nodded. "That sounds like a wonderful idea. Thank you, Albus." Arthur turned to Harry. "And thank you, Harry Potter." It was approximately the 32nd time that Arthur had thanked Harry. Harry had run out of ways to say, "You're welcome." Molly began ushering her family out the door. Ron was the last out, closing the door behind them. Harry and Dumbledore alone in the headmaster's office. There was a brief silence before Dumbledore spoke. "I am curious to know," Dumbledore said, "exactly how you were able to persuade a basilisk to disobey the heir of Slytherin." Before Harry could answer, the door to Dumbledore's office burst open. Lucius Malfoy strode into the room, face full of rage. At his feet was Dobby the house elf, desperately trying to shine Lucius's shoes. "Dumbledore, you have returned. I would not have thought you to be so brazen as to flout the Board of Governors' suspension." "Ah, Lucius," said Dumbledore. "The 11 other governors contacted me today. It seems that they wished me to return and resolve the situation with Ms. Weasley. In fact, several of them were under the belief that you had threatened their families prior to the vote on my suspension." Harry's eyebrows went up. Behind Mr. Malfoy, Dobby was waving his hands. The elf pointed at the mangled diary that lay on Dumbledore's desk, then at Lucius Malfoy. Dobby pantomimed pulling an item out of a pocket and then handing it over. The elf's action seemed absurd. Could he be suggesting that Lucius Malfoy had given the diary to Ginny Weasley? Harry nodded at the elf, indicating that he understood. Harry caught a slight movement out of the corner of his eye. Dumbledore appeared to have nodded, as well. Dumbledore smiled. "Harry, if you would step outside for a moment, please? Mr. Malfoy and I need to discuss certain matters that I'm certain he would prefer to keep quiet." Harry stepped outside Dumbledore's office. He didn't know what to think. He knew that Mr. Malfoy had ancient and powerful magical artifacts at Malfoy Manor, because Mr. Malfoy had sold some to Borgin and Burkes during their trip to Nocturne Alley. But why would Mr. Malfoy have a copy of Lord Voldemort's diary? And why would he have given it to Ginny Weasley, as Dobby had been pantomiming? Besides, Mr. Malfoy never would have had a chance, except at Flourish and Blots, at the beginning of the year, when he had placed his hands inside Ginny's cauldron. These thoughts rolled over and over in Harry's head until the door to the headmaster's office opened and Lucius Malfoy stepped out, followed by Dobby. Mr. Malfoy seemed furious, but his face softened slightly when he saw Harry. "Harry, I am sorry for that display. Dumbledore and I have had our differences in the past, and we will have them again, in the future. Nothing, however, is more important than our students. I am quite glad to see you safe. Having you visit Malfoy Manor was a pleasure last summer. I hope that you will consider visiting again." I think I'd like that, sir." "Good. Dumbledore has informed me that you must remain with your aunt and uncle for at least 1 month. Please inform your guardians that, on the 32nd day of your holiday, I will personally rescue you from their miserable muggle hovel." "I won't use quite those words." Lucius smiled. "I wish you would. I will see you soon, Harry." As Lucius walked down the hall, Dobby trailing at his heels, Harry called out, "Mr. Malfoy." "Wait." Harry ran down the hall to catch up with Draco's father. "Mr. Malfoy, did you give Voldemort's diary to Ginny Weasley?" Mr. Malfoy's back went ramrod straight. He spoke without turning around. "Harry, that diary was a dangerous piece of dark magic. Your actions in rescuing Ms. Weasley were nothing short of exceptional. There are so few pure-blood families in England that I would not wish a prominent pure-blood family to suffer such a loss." Mr. Malfoy turned and looked at Harry. "Your resourcefulness and cunning are a testament to both you and your Slytherin education." Harry shrugged. "I was just doing what was right." Dumbledore's voice came from the office. "Harry, if you would return for just a moment, please." Harry gave a small wave to Mr. Malfoy and walked back into Dumbledore's office. It had not escaped Harry's notice that Mr. Malfoy had failed to answer his question. Once the door to the office was shut and Harry was again seated, Dumbledore spoke. "Now, you were just about to tell me how you were able to persuade a basilisk to disobey Salazar Slytherin's last living heir." Harry winced. In his original telling of the story, it was the one point where he had glossed over the details. Dumbledore, of course, had noticed immediately. "I told the snake to stop, because I was in Slytherin house. I said that I, too, was an heir of Slytherin's spirit. Voldemort kept insisting that the snake obey him, saying that he was the blood of Slytherin. The basilisk was about to attack, but then I remembered our conversation from earlier this year, the one when I asked if there was a part of Voldemort's magic inside me. You said there was." Dumbledore nodded slowly. "I told the basilisk that I had the blood of Slytherin inside me, and I cut my hand open to show it. Voldemort was still a ghost. He didn't have a body yet, so he didn't have any blood. He had the spirit, but I had the spirit and the blood. The basilisk was convinced by the smell of my blood, and closed its eyes for me. Voldemort was really angry, so he used my wand to cut off the basilisk's head. That's all there was to it. Dumbledore was quiet for a long moment. Harry, the basilisk is the king of serpents. For a basilisk to close its eyes is a sign of great subservience. But that is not the only extraordinary thing to happen in the chamber. Dumbledore nodded at Fawkes in the corner of the room. You must have shown real loyalty to me in your battle with Voldemort. Nothing else would have called Fawkes to you. Harry shrugged. I told Voldemort that you were a greater wizard than him. That he was scared of you, and that's why he framed Hagrid for opening the chamber 50 years ago. If he wasn't scared, he wouldn't have needed a scapegoat. Harry smiled a little. Voldemort didn't like hearing that. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. I expect not. That took great courage, Harry. Harry sighed. Sometimes I do feel like I should have been sorted into Gryffindor, he said. In another lifetime, perhaps, said Dumbledore. You do have many of the qualities that Godric Gryffindor would have prized in his hand-picked students. Courage, tenacity, pride, and a certain level of recklessness. So you think I should have been in Gryffindor? No, Harry. You display those qualities, and yet the Sorting Hat placed you in Slytherin. Why is that? Harry thought for a moment. The only reason I'm in Slytherin is because I asked the Sorting Hat. Exactly. It is our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities. In the Chamber of Secrets, you accepted a great burden. You accepted that your life is inextricably intertwined with Voldemort's. You not only accepted that you are a Slytherin, but you declared yourself to be Salazar Slytherin's rightful heir. And a basilisk acknowledged your claim, Harry. The King of Serpents bowed to you. Nobody but a true Slytherin would have thought to take that course of action, and nobody but a true Slytherin could have survived it. Harry felt as if an icy hand had grabbed his heart. Although Dumbledore meant his words to be reassuring, Harry was suddenly reminded of Voldemort's comparison of himself to Harry. Dumbledore sensed the change in Harry's mood. Perhaps you would like to return to your dormitory to wash up, Harry. You deserve a few moments of privacy, but please do join us at the midnight feast. I rather think you will be the guest of honor. Thank you, sir, Harry said. Dumbledore smiled kindly. Of course. Exclamation point. Exclamation point. Exclamation point. Asterisk. Harry lay on his bed in the dark. The snores of Crabbe and Goyle echoed through the Slytherin boys' dormitory. Otherwise, the school was silent around him. The feast had been magnificent. 7 Wheeleyes had been seated at the Gryffindor table, surrounding Ginny on all sides. Midway through the feast, Hermione Granger burst into the hall, freshly unpetrified by Professor Sprout's mandrakes. She nearly tackled Ron, shouting, "You solved it! You solved it!" Dumbledore again awarded Harry and Ron an enormous amount of points for their heroism. In the House Cup competition, Slytherin and Gryffindor leapt ahead of the other houses. Slytherin still had a comfortable lead for the House Cup, based largely on their Quidditch victory over Gryffindor earlier in the year. Severus Snape, re-enervated by Dumbledore himself, smirked at McGonagall. McGonagall did not smile back, and instead focused on her pudding. Gilderoy Lockhart was not in attendance. He was up in the hospital wing, his mind a complete muddled mess. The backfired memory charm had erased nearly every memory he had, even the memory that magic was real. Harry could think of few things that would be more horrible. As the night crept closer to dawn, Hagrid charged into the Great Hall. He immediately found Harry and enveloped him in an enormous hug. "Thank ye, Harry. I always knew you were a good un." After Harry was released, he turned to Draco. "I told you so," said Harry. Draco sniffed and looked away. Later, after the feast had ended, the students returned to their beds. The train trip home had been cancelled, but so had classes. Everybody was looking forward to taking extra, lazy hours to sleep late into the morning. But in the dark that preceded dawn, Harry Potter was unable to sleep. Nervous thoughts tumbled through Harry's head. Had Lucius Malfoy actually meant to hurt Ginny Weasley by giving her the diary? Maybe Mr. Malfoy didn't realize how dangerous it was. But there had to be a reason to give the diary to Ginny. And if there was a reason, it could only have been because Mr. Malfoy was trying to cause Ginny some sort of harm, or get her into some kind of trouble. Which suggested that Mr. Malfoy knew something of the diary's power, or its origins, and realized that it could be dangerous. If Mr. Malfoy gave the diary to Ginny, he knew exactly what he was doing. Harry struggled to reconcile this new understanding of Mr. Malfoy with his memory of the man who had embraced him like a son. Mr. Malfoy had helped Harry onto the Hogwarts Express. He had been so proud when both Harry and Draco were sorted into Slytherin. Lucius and Narcissa Malfoy had given Harry a beautiful scarf and gloves for Christmas the previous year, among the first presents that Harry had ever received. Mr. Malfoy had rescued Harry from Privet Drive the previous summer and had finally given Vernon Dursley his comeuppance. Mr. Malfoy bought Harry his first broom. Harry couldn't believe that Lucius Malfoy was some sort of evil child killer. There had to be some explanation for his actions that Harry simply couldn't understand. Harry was determined to discover why Mr. Malfoy would give Ginny Weasley the diary, and he planned to get his answers that summer at Malfoy Manor. Chapter 16. Harry Potter and the Heir of Slytherin is complete. Today begins the next chapter in our tale, Harry Potter and the Dementors of Azkaban. Click through my profile to get there. And if you just can't wait, here's a preview of the first few pages of Chapter 1. Harry awoke disoriented, unfamiliar with his surroundings. After thrashing about in bed, the events of the previous night came back to him in a rush, blowing up his Aunt Marge, being stalked by an enormous black dog, escaping on the night bus, and meeting the Minister of Magic in Diagon Alley outside. The Leaky Cauldron. That's where he was. Harry relaxed slightly. Even though he had just performed underage magic, and even though he had just run away from his ostensible home, Harry felt relieved. His feet were light as he got dressed. A quick trip to Gringotts would give him enough money to finish the week at the Leaky Cauldron. By that time, he should receive his second notice of underage magic usage, and he would need to secure a solicitor to fight against his expulsion from Hogwarts. Harry had promised the minister that he wouldn't leave Diagon Alley, but it was an easy promise to make. Harry had no plans of returning to the Muggle world anytime soon. Stepping outside the Leaky Cauldron, Harry found himself in the midst of magical London's most popular shopping district. Diagon Alley held a special place in Harry's heart, as it was the first place that Harry had truly entered the magical world. Hagrid had purchased Harry's owl, Hedwig, during Harry's first trip to Diagon Alley. Harry met his closest friend, Draco Malfoy, in Diagon Alley. Later, Draco's father Lucius bought Harry his first broom at Quality Quidditch Supplies in Diagon Alley. For Harry, a trip to Diagon Alley meant leaving the Dursleys and returning to the magical world. His world. His parents' world, before they died. Harry's trip to Gringotts was uneventful. As always, the goblins were curt and grouchy, but they did give Harry a limited amount of respect. Partly for his status as the boy who lived, and partly for his status as the heir to an enormously well-stocked vault. Harry had a feeling that, unlike everybody else in the wizarding world, the goblins respected him more for his vault than for his scar. It was refreshing to be treated just like any other, enormously rich, wizard would be. He left the bank with pockets full, but stomach empty. He decided to stop back at the Leaky Cauldron to pay for his room and eat breakfast. Harry approached the innkeeper, but was told that his room had already been paid for. Already paid? By who? A voice spoke from behind Harry. By me. Harry turned and saw Lucius Malfoy approaching from across the dining room. Minister Fudge contacted me this morning. Couldn't stand another day with those muggles, Harry. Harry smiled. You've met my uncle. Would you want to? Lucius nodded. Quite right, quite right. Before Harry could say anything else, his stomach rumbled. Why don't we have breakfast, suggested Mr. Malfoy. You can tell me why you left while we eat. Several minutes later, Harry found an enormous stack of pancakes sitting before him. Mr. Malfoy had selected a large plate of fresh tropical fruits, most of which Harry failed to recognize. So, Harry, why last night? Your trip to Malfoy Manor was only a week away. Harry looked down at his lap. I blew up my Aunt Maud. Lucius raised his eyebrows. Blew her up, Harry. Harry's voice was quiet. She was saying the worst things about my mother and father. I couldn't stand to hear it. It's been years since I did accidental magic, but I just couldn't control myself. I blew her up like a balloon and she floated out of the house and down the street. Harry took a deep breath. It won't be long until I get my second notice for underage magic. If you could recommend a good solicitor, I'll need it, or else I'll be expelled from Hogwarts. Lucius burst out laughing. Harry, please don't sound so despondent. People don't get underage magic notices for accidental magic. But last year. Lucius held up a hand. More importantly, Harry, is that you don't get underage magic notices for accidental magic. I will speak to Minister Fudge and inform him of the circumstances. Exceptions can be made, and one can certainly be made for Harry Potter, a dear friend of the Malfoy family. Harry smiled. You really think so? Of course. Even if your second notice has already been drafted, well, documents are lost so frequently in the vast bureaucracy of the Ministry of Magic. I wouldn't be surprised if your notice were to be similarly lost. Lucius carefully cut a piece of fruit on his plate. Never forget, Harry, that the advantages of being in Slytherin last long beyond your years at Hogwarts.